Hey guys, what's up? Evan from Stock Music Musician. Sorry about that, mic problems. And today we've got another video in the beginners series on Reason, and this is just sort of an introduction, high level, to what is an LFO. And LFOs are where it's at when it comes to modulating one sound with another. It stands for low frequency oscillator. And what do those words mean? Well, basically, it just means it's a waveform that has a predictable pattern, and it moves reasonably slowly compared to other waveforms. You don't really need to know that definition. Basically, the best way of thinking about it is it's just a pattern. And it's a pattern that has a shape to it, and you can use that shape and that pattern to control other functions of a synthesizer or effect, and that is a great way of making music, as opposed to using automation, where you have to manually draw things in. And I just did a video on automation in Reason, which is a great way of doing things. I do a lot of stuff through automation, but sometimes the LFO is the easier way of doing it. So I'm going to go ahead and open a Europa. And the reason I want to do this is because Europa is great at at providing a visual representation of sound. So you'll see the Europa right here. I'm just going to hold down Okay, so the main reason I'm using Europa is because of the visual feedback it provides. So, right here you've got 3 LFOs in the Europa. And if you look down here, it says LFO 1 affects the pitch of oscillator 2, but by 0%. So what I'm going to do real quick is throw a player on so I can do this one-handed, and that'll just make it easier to use the mouse. Okay, so I want to go to the pads are a little easier of a way to, pads are a little easier of a way to hear this, I think, to start with. Rhythmic mic. So there's a lot of LFOs doing work on this patch. You can see a few of them here. We'll open up a few more, and then I'm actually going to start making things with LFOs. Doesn't that sound lovely? Let's just go to a pad or a poly. So I'm going to keep this up because it has the visual information. But now what we're going to do is we're going to go to a Dr. Rex, because Dr. Rex is a built-in LFO, and it's a very simple thing to hear and see. So what we're going to do is we'll just open up a very simple, let's do a music loop, down-tempo guitar, sure. And we'll just hit run. Something a little more information. Perfect. Okay, so this is just the loop playing by itself. So now you have the LFO section of Dr. Rex. And so I've got a few choices here. The first one is the shape of the loop, which or the shape of the oscillator. And as we talked about, it's just a pattern that repeats. So basically what you're going to do is if you select the triangle, it sort of goes up and down, up and down, up and down, or I mean the sawtooth. And then you've got up ramps going up and down. You've got the square wave and the sine wave, and I can't quite see what this last one, maybe a random wave. And so this is the shape of the wave that you're using. It's pretty much simple waves in Dr. Rex. This is the rate, the speed at which it's going. Normally it's just random, but if you hit sync, then it will be synced to the tempo. And we'll do, let's do 4/4. That's fast enough to hear, but not fast enough to be annoying. And first we'll start with it on the oscillator. This is going to sound terrible. You'll hear the pitch going all over the place. But if you do it at a low level, it actually does sound, it can give you that old school, like out of tune bad sample type sound of something that keeps on losing its pitch, like an old school sample based instrument that keeps drifting, or an analog synthesizer. So let's listen to it with and without it. So right now, just this is automatically, the destination control is saying that it'll send it to the oscillator, and the oscillator controls the pitch basically. Or what we can do is we can send it to the filter, and the filter is basically like an EQ. And what we'll do, so you can hear it, is we'll put it on a bandpass filter, which basically removes part of the frequency spectrum. And what the LFO will do is it will it'll shift which part is being moved around. Pardon me. And we can do. Let's try with the high pass. And a low pass. So this is a really easy way to, and then you can also have it pan back and forth just by default. So if you had headphones on, you could hear that going back and forth. So the LFO basically just moves things around based on its shape. And this is the default wiring. But you also have the option, both in what's it called? In Dr. Rex, by hitting tab, you flip it around and you notice there's a mod output here, LFO. So you can actually have the LFO control other things besides just the filter, frequency, and the oscillator. So you can have it control the volume, for example. Or you can have it control a totally different instrument. And so let's just do, I think we'll do one that has more useful direct input. So we'll just pull up a subtractor. A lot of these work more directly with the older synths. The newer synths don't have as many inputs. They're more about using just CV inputs and modifying things from there. But let's go to this bass guitar, and so so this is what it sounds like. I should have showed you without the LFO. So if we take the other LFO, we now have the filter is being controlled by the LFO in the Dr. Rex. You could also have the LFO from the subtractor control something somewhere else. Or, you know, as I did on the video on automation, what you can do is you could go to filter 1, and instead of having the LFO control it, what you could do is actually draw in, like, right, we've got this sine wave LFO, or I mean this triangle LFO, and you can just draw it in manually, which is a huge pain in the ass, but and we need to like super speed that up to make it probably even more than that, but so you can actually draw this stuff in as well. It should really be more like this. Oops, get over here. Which is why you'd want to use the LFO, because it's so much more efficient to just twiddle with the LFO. Now, the best, most powerful LFO, I think, in Reason, is the Pulsar. The Pulsar is a utility. I don't know if it comes with Reason or if it's a rack extension, but it's really powerful, and it's great because it has way more shapes than the default LFOs. You can control its rate and its level. You can also control where it is and its phase. You can have it shuffle a bit or lag. There's actually 2 different LFOs on it, and you can have them sync together. You can have one modify the other, and you can also have them trigger so they only kick in when you actually hit a note. So I'm going to show you a quick example of that. What we'll do here was we'll take the amp out here. Okay, you're not going to take that, huh? Oh, sorry. We'll see if the filter envelope will kick in. Alright, so you're always kicking something in. And what about the mod envelope? Alright, so you notice now that when I hit a note in the subtractor, the pulsar lights up. And now if we turn on LFO2, it will trigger. Sorry, it's the other way around. So this triggers LFO2. And so if we sync it to this, its LFO1 starts every time we hit a key, which can be really helpful if you've got a complex waveform, and then you'll get the same sort of processing on each sound. So if we go now and have CV1 control the filter resonance and the filter frequency, and let's clear the automation. Let's do and so because of the trigger, you notice the attack is going to be the same each time. But if I hold it longer, it gets a chance to actually kick in. Now if we turn that off, you'll hear it just keeps playing the pattern. So without the attack on, without the envelope sync, every time you press the button, you get on a different part of the phase. So LFOs are super I feel like I've gone a bit astray, but that LFOs are a super powerful way of controlling and modulating your sound. This is really just the tip of the iceberg, but I think you need to spend a lot of time just messing around with your synths, seeing what the buttons do, the knobs, and then attaching LFOs to them. If you've enjoyed this, please be sure to give us a like and a thumbs up, and also visit the Patreon page where there's a lot of extra content available and lessons and song critiques and mix critiques and things like that. But before I go, I want to leave you with one other thing, and that is bringing us all the way back to Europa here. We're going to reset this device because now on a lot of the more modern, quote-unquote, newer synths and Reason, the way a lot of stuff works is actually just through generic voltages, sort of. So what we can do is we'll take CV2, because there's two different LFOs, or an output from Pulsar LFO2 to CV in 1 in Europa. So instead of having all these different sections here, like the subtractor does, Europa has 4 sort of generic CV sections, and then you go down to this menu here, and you have CV1, and now you can control how much CV1 controls, like the filter's frequency. Sure. So let's turn the filter on, and let's and if we and we can have it control another thing, like we can, with this we can drag it to, so it's going to control the resonance and the filter. And let's just show you one other cool thing. So we'll have the amount there. We'll do something a little more subtle. And what I want to show you is that by taking control of this, you basically now we can do CV1 again, and have you also have it control so many things using this sort of matrix here. So we can control, let's turn on engine 2 as well. So we can also have it control like engine 2's filter frequency, and let's also do U in reverse, and then also have you control filter 1 or engine 1 oscillator 1's like mod 2 amount. So now let's just see, we'll just demonstrate sort of how. But now what I want to do is delete Pulsar, and let's just listen to what it sounds like without it. A much simpler sound. And so the point is basically you need to start digging into these and see how you want to use them to get your sounds, because they can be really powerful. Also, honestly, on these modern things like Europa, there's 3 LFOs built into it, so you maybe don't need to use an external one, but you can use one external LFO like Pulsar to sync multiple synths, which is one of its big advantages, right? Like you could have 3 Europas, and you could have them all timed to the same LFO and all triggered by the same event. Plenty of other basically I think everything since the Thor pretty much uses, has the opportunity to use these matrices to control things. Thor is sort of a hybrid, but most synths are somewhere in between. I really hope you found this useful. Thanks so much for watching, and please let us know